A little bit about that in the interview. All right, let's rock and roll here. Count down in 3, 2. My next guest, you know who he is, picked up a huge win on Dana White's Contender Series back on September 27th, getting it done in the 3rd round by knockout. It is Jack Jenkins joining me here on the program. Jack, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing awesome, but I'm not a member of the UFC roster. Congratulations. We're a couple weeks removed from the win. Has it sunk in yet? You're a UFC fighter, man. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's starting to sink in now. Just had a wild couple of months. So now I've had a few days at home to decompress. It's starting to sink in.
I know you were the betting favorite going into the fight, but you dominated from bell to bell, including getting the finish in the 3rd round. Were you expecting that? I know you expected to win, but do you expect to win that dominantly?
Yeah, I did, to be honest. I thought when you compared my game and Freddy's game, mine was one of precision and not taking any damage, and his was one of taking damage and giving a little bit more back. So I thought that I had all the tools to be able to get it done.
Anything about him surprise you at all? Looking back on the fight, again, you got the win, but sometimes you're in there, you see something maybe you didn't expect.
The only thing that surprised me was that I thought coming from his wrestling background, when I applied the pressure from the mount, I thought he would turn to his base and give his back. Whereas he sort of refused to do that. He was happy to play off his back and try and lock me down. But yeah, other than that, it was all exactly what I expected. Expected him to stand tall, throw punches in 2s and 3s, come forward, and that's why my timing on my takedowns was on point, because we thought that was going to be how he came forward.
So I'm watching it at home. You get to finish. I'm like, you got the contract no matter what. But you're also on a card with Bo Nickel, and I think it was sort of assumed that Bo was going to win his fight and get his contract, and you never know with the UFC. Was there any doubt at all you might not get the contract, or were you pretty confident?
I was fretting out the back.
Okay.
And I was like to my coaches, did I do enough? Did I do enough? And they were both like, mate, you 100% did enough. You got the finish, 10-9 in the first, 10-8 in the second, then a TKO. You 100% got it. And then I went, and when they put us on the chairs, I said, Sam Patterson sat next to me, and I said, oh, fuck, do you think I did enough? And he's like, mate, 100%, you're in. Don't even stress. But then on the screen in front of me, Paul Felder's power rankings came up, and he ranked everyone's performances of the night, and he put me at number 4. And I was like, oh, fuck, no, Paul Felder's put me at number 4 on the power rankings. But yeah, looking back on it now and after rewatching the fight, there would have been mayhem if he didn't give me a contract after that. So
I know, right? I mean, it seemed pretty obvious, but you never know. Sometimes they're a bit weird with the contracts, but glad to see you get it. So what's going through your head? Obviously, a lot of work put into this, coming over to the US, taking the fight. What's going through your head when you finally get the contract?
Just relief more than anything.
Okay,
I've put so many years and sacrificed so much to get here. It was just a relief to be able to, say that I'm foot in the door now, and I've got the ability to do this full time. And, I don't have to work at the pub or sleep on the floor at the gym anymore and that sort of stuff. So it's a chance to chase it with everything I got, as opposed to trying to, make it my main priority and then fill the gaps with paying rent and paying the bills in other areas.
What was it like being on the same card as Bo Nickel? Because there was more attention with the fact that not only was the last card of the season, but also Bo brought a lot of eyeballs as well. I think a lot of people were kind of anticipating that. What was it like being a part of that card?
Yeah, no, it was cool. Bo's a nice guy. We were out the back together. We were in the same little area. The only thing is the UFC told me I could only have 2 corners, and I asked if I could bring a third out the back. One of my training partners, because I like to spar to warm up. I like to do 2 rounds. Sparring before I actually go out to the fight, and they're like, nah, 2 corners is it. And then I rock up out the back, and fucking Bo Nickel has 12 blokes there out the back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
literally had 12 guys there, and I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, I don't know, that was the only thing for me. But other than that, Bo was really cool. I spoke to him. He was a good dude, and yeah, it was good to have all the eyeballs on the show for sure.
And when did you get back home to and all that? Just after the show and everything, did you get a little bit of time in Vegas, or did you have to go straight back?
I got home exactly a week ago today, so I was in Vegas for 5-6 days after the fight.
Nice, that's good. Did you get to use the PI and all that? That's one of the nice perks of being a UFC fighter, right?
I went to the PI every day. I was telling somebody yesterday, probably when it first sunk in that I was a UFC fighter, was that they make it very clear to you when you're on Contender that you're not part of the UFC. They don't totally say that, but in all the dealings with them and the contracts and, what you're allowed and not allowed to do, they make it very clear you're not in the UFC when you're on Contender. But then as soon as you get the contract, it's like a full 180. You get like a full VIP treatment. You know, I got taken into the PI, and Forrest and Marcel, the head of the PI, took you around. They give you all these numbers. Call this guy for this. Call this guy for this. You book in for here. All your food is free if you're a UFC athlete, which is awesome. So I ended up just going into the PI every day. And I think when it really sunk in was me and my brother and my friend were sitting in the change rooms, and we were just chatting with Sean Strickland, Rafael Asuncao, and Francis Ngannou. And we're kind of sitting there, and we're all just talking like normal, like guys to guy, you know, just normal chat. And then we left, and I was like to my brother, fuck, we're in there because of me. Like, that's, you know, we're in there, a UFC fighter like those guys. And that was a cool moment that started to sink in then.
That's a very odd pairing, but very cool that you got to kind of experience all that too, which is great. I'd imagine you were talking about how, you know, obviously they make it very clear you're a Contender Series fighter. Is it kind of like you're now in first class on the flight as opposed to coach? That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. Like the analogy I used was like, you know, when you go into the army and you're in like recruit training, and it's like you get the white shirt and you get the white shorts and you have the same haircut, and you're a maggot, like you're not actually part of the army yet. You have to get through this course. I kind of look more like that. It was like you're here to get tested to see whether you belong, and once you're in, and you get treated like really well.
So interesting time we were doing this interview. They just announced recently UFC 284 coming to Perth. I imagine that would be the ideal scenario, you making your debut on that card.
Yeah, so I kind of my first instinct was that I wanted to fight in December because that would have been my 4th fight this year. So I wanted to get another one in. But that didn't pan out. The UFC kind of not steered me in the direction, but they kind of alluded to the fact that they would like me to be on the Perth card, and the risk of injury or, you know, anything like that in December would sort of lower those chances. So I think, yeah, we're going to aim to make my debut for the UFC on that Perth card in February. So I'm really excited to get ready for that. I'll do a big block of training in November, December, kind of have 4 or 5 days off at Christmas because I haven't spent Christmas with my family and actually had to relax for a few years because I've had fights coming up all the time. So that'll be nice to do. And then I'll sort of back up that last 6 weeks between Christmas and Feb 12th or Feb 10th, whenever it is, and yeah, ready to go.
Any opponents in mind? You know, how about any like fun matchups? I'm sure you're kind of scanning the division right now, you know, kind of looking at the roster. Is there any sort of fun fights you think that, you know, for fighters that are available right now?
No, not really. Look, I said this after my fight. I'm not going to come in here and start saying names or calling anyone out until.
Well, see, that's why I was very selective in how I asked. I said fun fight, because if I was to say, hey, who are you calling out, that's different. But if you're saying, hey, what would be a fun matchup? It's kind of a positive thing, right?
I think me and Josh Emmett would be a great fight.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but yeah, as far as who do I want to fight in December, in February, anything. Once I get a couple of wins, then I'll start saying some names and sort of pick my own path. But until then, I'll just do what I'm told. Be a good company man.
There you go. Okay, I like that. That makes sense. We got the big UFC 280 card next Saturday. Curious your pick in the main event: Charles Oliveira, Islam Makhachev. Who do you think wins?
Well, I'm taking the betting underdog in the 3 main fights. I think O'Malley beats Jan. I think TJ beats Aljo, and I think Charles beats Islam. Interesting.
How do you think Charles defeats Islam?
I think he finishes him in the 3rd or 4th round. I think Islam is so used to just having a massive grappling advantage against everyone he's fought, and I think when he realizes that he doesn't have, maybe he does have an advantage, but once he realizes that Charles will threaten stuff and Charles will threaten him from positions, he'll start to second guess himself because he would never have had that in a fight before. And then I think Charles will start to take over from there. Whether Islam backs away from things and Charles gets back to his feet and goes to work on the feet, or he starts to slow down and then Charles can find a way to get to his back or get to a submission. There's that too. I think TJ is the best bantamweight ever. You know, asterisk next to his name for sure, but I think he's just better than Aljo. I don't know how he's paying $350. And I think O'Malley, his style, well, actually, you might know, is that fight 5 or 3 rounds?
It's only 3 rounds, so that does favor O'Malley. You'd have to think who's a bit of a fast starter, Jan a bit of a slow starter.
If it was 5 rounds, I would probably go the other way and say Jan. But O'Malley's style to be able to keep Jan on the outside and tag him enough in those first 2 rounds and then not get finished. I think it's more than enough. So I'm a betting man. So I'll take the underdogs in those ones.
You were telling me off air that you actually were up in Canada. You said you were in Edmonton for a bit. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was in Canada playing a bit of rugby when I was there, because I came from a rugby background, and sort of I'd been training a lot, and I was kind of almost going to make my pro debut when I turned 18 here in Australia, because I'd been training all through my teenage years, and it kind of came to a head where I nearly booked a fight, and then it fell through, and my coach kind of alluded to the fact that he thought I had all the tools to do well, but he thought I might have been a bit young and a bit immature to take it with both hands. So yeah, I decided to move over to Canada, and I was just playing rugby and sort of being young and sort of getting that out of my system while I was over there. And it ended up working out really well, because when I got back, you know, I'm not big into partying or going out or anything like that. So by the time I got back, that's all out of my system, and I've been full steam ahead with the training and just being focused on one thing since then.
Was it one of those things where you came out and like worked at like a resort or something out there? Because I know a lot of Aussies do that. That's like, I live in Vancouver. A lot of people do that in Whistler. They'll go and actually just work there so they can just party. Was it a similar thing in Alberta?
No, I worked at an Australian startup company, which was a swim school. So,
oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, like you would know, like in Canada, they teach swimming at the Red Cross.
Yeah.
So we started like a private version of that, which is a bit more like smaller class sizes and a bit more specialized. And yeah, I was over there teaching swimming for work. It was pretty good. I love doing it.
And you said you came up to British Columbia. You've been up here before?
Yeah, I've been to Vancouver. I loved it. I went.
Did you go to Whistler though? That's my question, because you were telling me about Vancouver.
No, I never went to Whistler. But I've been to interior BC, been to like Kicking Horse and Kelowna and those kind of places. And it's like Kelowna, I think, is maybe one of the nicest places on earth.
It is. Now, I got to tell you, if you ever come back up here again, please go to Whistler. And then I'd like you to compare Whistler to Edmonton, because we were having this argument off air, not argument, discussion, I should say. But I think if you go to Whistler, it will change your opinion of Edmonton, and you will favor Whistler over that, because I think Whistler's one of the best places on the planet. They had the Olympics there, remember? So
we've got Banff in Alberta. We got Banff.
That's true. I think Whistler's better than Banff personally, but
yeah, I'll have to check it out, because I love Banff. I love the mountains, so I can't imagine I would dislike Whistler.
There you go. I don't mean to turn this into like a tourist show, but I just, I'm from here, so I gotta support my my fellow people here. Jack, thanks so much for doing this, man. Really excited to see when that debut takes place. Like we said, probably 284. If there's anyone you'd like to thank before we get out of here, any sponsors, any social media, anything like that, I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, thank you. Just like to give a shout out to Carmel, Marie, and Joseph from Tripod Farmers, Brad from Diablo Concrete, and Jordan from Diversiplum. Those guys sponsored me for this last fight. And without them, I wouldn't have been able to take both of my coaches over to America. I just wouldn't have been able to afford it. So thanks to those guys for helping me out. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully see everyone and talk to you again before we go again in February.